Okay, I want to start today's PECS and politics by sending a massive congratulations across the pond to Governor Murphy of the state of New Jersey. He's a Democrat governor in the Garden State. And this week he passed a new law that prohibits the amount of time that somebody in prison can spend in solitary confinement, limiting it to 20 consecutive days or 30 days within a 60-day period. It places even more restriction on the practice for members of vulnerable populations, so including prisoners under the age of 21 or over 65, LGBTQ inmates and those who are pregnant or disabled. So well done to Governor Murphy for taking what is a progressive step, I believe, in terms of prison reform in a country that has a criminal justice system which is one of the most strict, with the longest sentences, with the most barbaric of prison conditions in the Western world. Now, to be honest with you, the idea of going to prison scares me shitless. Why? Well, I don't want my freedom taken away from me, whether I'm put in a room with a TV, with a kitchen, with all the mod cons that I can't leave of my own volition. I still don't want that either. Or whether I'm put in a stone cold cell with just a metal box for a toilet and a bunk with a mattress this thin. That's even worse, of course. Neither are particularly pleasant, but your freedom is taken away from you. But if I had to choose where I would go to prison, I would certainly rather go to prison here in the Netherlands than in the USA, or even in the UK. The whole point, I believe, and surely, of a criminal justice system should be, the main purpose should be, to make society safer. And there are many ways you can look at doing that. There are many ways which may be hypothesised as working. What ways could society be made safer? Well, you can obviously lock up dangerous people and keep them locked up. You can kill them, of course, by executing them. I'm going to discount that one because I think execution is a barbaric, inhumane form of state-sponsored murder, and it sends out entirely the wrong message, and it sends a hypocritical message that it's okay for states to murder but not individuals. Even though that individual may have been a murderer, I still think it is a hypocritical and backward step for a society to take. But of course the United States has that in various states around the United States, and here, luckily, in Europe, we don't. At least within the European Union countries, we don't. Another reason why Brexit is a little bit scary, because it might mean the British could consider returning capital punishment. So punishment, of course, locking people up, that's one way of keeping the streets safe. You keep people away, but you can't keep them away forever. Because if they're just bad people who steal things and rob people or mug people, you can't keep them banged up for life. Well, you could, but that would seem rather disproportionate and unjust to keep them banged up for life. So there are other ways of looking at making society safe. Maybe not even banging them up. There are other forms of punishment as well. Tagging them, giving them community service, fining them. There are different ways of doing that. So there are also preventative measures. How can you stop people from becoming criminals in the first place? Making societies safer, making societies a nicer place to live, making people feel proud of the society that they live in so they don't want to commit crime, making them feel included in their society, making them feel part of a society where they don't feel like they're living on the fringes, make them feel like they can actually participate in that society. So these are all preventative measures in order to stop people from going into a life of crime to start with. Also things like drug rehabilitation, help for drug users as well. Also perhaps decriminalising drugs. But we'll talk about that in the next video, particularly in relation to what's been going on in Scotland and the very high amount of drug deaths there. Of course, people see punishment as serving several purposes. Of course, there's revenge. These people have committed a crime, an eye for an eye, we have to punish them. And of course, in more backward countries, they do literally, not literally an eye for an eye, but they do take revenge in an equal, proportionate way that they feel that to the crime, like chopping off hands in Saudi Arabia or chopping off heads publicly. I don't want to live in a society where that happens, but there are certain societies that do that. So revenge, locking people up, taking away their freedom, making them do things they don't want to do, taking away contact with family, regular contact with family and friends, depriving them of romantic relationships, depriving them of love, depriving them of all the mod cons, depriving them of entertainment, depriving them of all the freedoms that we as free, law-abiding citizens, most of the time, enjoy. So there's revenge. There's also retribution for the people, because victims want to feel like there is retribution for the crime that's been committed either against them or their family members or their friends. They need to see that the person who committed the crime against their loved one is justly being punished for the crime that they've committed. So there's that as well. And the other one, which isn't very popular amongst hardline conservatives, is rehabilitation. Helping those people who commit crimes, who do wrong things, to be better people in the future and not go down that path again. Now, there are various countries around the world, 180 I think countries in total, I don't know, it constantly changes because new countries come into existence now and again. Not constantly changes, but changes now and again. Something like 180, 190 countries around the world. And they all have their own different criminal justice systems. Here in Europe, the British criminal justice system is considered quite tough. There's lots of old Victorian age prisons with thick iron bars and concrete cells that don't look terribly pleasant to me, and they can be quite violent places. There's, where there are obviously nasty people inside that you don't really want to be around, and there's also been accusations of staff doing stuff to prisoners as well. Now, multiply that by 100 for the United States, which has pretty awful prisons. Basically, if you commit a crime and you go to prison, you take your life into your own hands. The welfare of prisoners in the United States is considered particularly bad. And I think a society is only as good as how it treats its worst people. You can see how humane a society is in how it treats its prisoners. Now, I'm not expecting people to treat prisoners like kings. Of course not. They need to be punished. They should have their freedom deprived from them. Or they should do criminal service. Or they should be fined. They should have to do all sorts of things to face what they've done. But at the same time, if we're going to make the streets safer, there needs to be rehabilitation in there as well. And genuine rehabilitation. They need to feel all those things that we talked about earlier that should have been in place to have prevented them from becoming criminals in the first place. They need to feel included. They need to feel like they can participate in the society, that they have the qualifications that they need to be part of that society. They need to feel like they are part of the community, and they need to have something in their life that they can be proud of, that they can work for, they can hope for. I know lots of you just want to say, no, bang them up and throw away the key. But the thing is, as I said to you earlier, the key of measuring the success of a criminal justice system is not how many people you can bang up and how hard you can treat them. It's whether the streets are made safer. The United States bangs people up, executes them in many states, particularly Texas, with a lethal injection in most cases. Sometimes it doesn't work straight away if they haven't got the right concoction. And the poor guy, well, I say poor guy, in that instance he's a poor guy, he's not necessarily been a poor guy for his whole life, is suffering excruciating pain before he dies. And I know many of you thinking, oh, I don't care. But, if they're going to kill people, try and do it in the most humane way, if there is such a thing as a humane execution. Anyway, execute people, put them in prisons with violent people, putting them in prisons which have terrible conditions, depriving them of natural light, only going out for 1 hour a day, if that, sometimes. Prison in the United States is horrible and hard, and you know what? It doesn't make the streets a safer place. They mix with other criminals, they mix with other gang members, there are fights in prison, people get murdered in prisons, murders come ordered from within prisons, outside of prisons, they meet other people, they get drugs coming into the prisons, they carry on with their lifestyle outside of prison because they've met more people in prison. Prison in the United States does not work. So why keep doing the same thing? If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Americans are so proud. I'm American, love America, America's so great. But you treat your prisoners like shit. You might say, yeah, they're prisoners. Well, imagine you end up in prison. Maybe even for a crime you didn't commit. Because you know what? In the USA, that's happened a few times. It's also happened in the UK a few times. I say a few, it's quite a bit more than a few. Imagine you end up in prison, maybe because of a crime you don't commit, or maybe because you make a mistake. You get dragged into the wrong crowd. You go down a path you regret, or you just get arrested for using a bit of weed one day, using a drug one day. You're at a party, you get dragged along, you got on you, you get done for possession, and you go to prison. Imagine you get treated like a scumbucket in American prisons, and then they expect you to come out if you're serving a relatively short sentence in the USA. Bear in mind, there are incredibly long sentences, and there are sentences like in California where there's 3 strikes and you're out, even if all you've done is stolen three loaves of bread each time. The 3rd time you're going to prison for the rest of your life. Nice. Once you come out, you think you're going to feel like you want to be part of that society that treated you like a complete piece of shit on the floor? How does that make you feel? And again, you might be thinking, I don't care what prisoners feel. I don't care how they are. Well, you might care when that person who comes out of prison, because they haven't been rehabilitated properly, they haven't been made to feel that there is hope in their life, they haven't been made to feel like that, yes, they can participate in that society, they haven't been given the tools to succeed, they haven't also been given aftercare from being in prison, that they then come out, they hate like society even more, they have even less pride in where they live, they hate people even more because it was people that treated them like crap when they were in prison. You think they're going to come out and feel great about themselves and then commit a crime against you or your family member or your friend? How are you going to feel about that? Of course, you're going to want to have revenge on them even more. Of course you want to say bang them up, throw away the key. But maybe that wouldn't have happened if they'd been in a system that had a bit more understanding, like here in the Netherlands or in Norway. And you can look at the criminal justice system here in the Netherlands, where they've had to close 4 prisons over the last year or so, or couple of years, because there aren't enough prisoners, because they don't bang people up as much as they do in other countries, like in the United States, where over 1 million people are in American prisons. They don't bang people up as first resort. Now, Dutch people criticise that. They say, oh, they're too lenient they're too light touch on prisoners. They don't give them long enough sentences. They don't bang people up when they should bang them up. But compare the crime rate here, and it's not brilliant. It's not amazing. There is crime. There is murder. There is violence. There is rape. But compare it to the crime rate in the UK and the USA, particularly USA. You tell me which one's more successful. I don't mean literal numbers, because obviously in the USA there's going to be more because there's more people. But per 100,000 or 1,000 of the population or whatever. Compare it to the USA. Which one is more successful? There's even prisons here in the Netherlands that they're having to rent out to Norway and Belgium because they don't have enough prisoners to fill them. So they're renting out prison space. And prisons here in the Netherlands are actually relatively nice places compared to other prisons. Prisoners usually they have their own bed. They're usually single bed. They've got their own bathroom. Yes, they're allowed to have TVs. They've got their own little kitchenette there in the prisons. And you could say, well, they don't deserve that. How dare they have that? They don't deserve that. And it's going to keep them want to come in back. But people who go out and then commit further crimes, the rate of that is far lower than many other countries. And they're given tools. There's much more stress put on rehabilitation. But before that, judges also look at prison as the last resort. They use other forms of punishment first, so as not to cause further problems, which might then lead their children to turn to crime. So for instance, if they know that a criminal who hasn't committed if they've committed a heinous, violent, vicious crime, they're obviously going to go to prison for quite a long time. If they've committed a crime which isn't that violent, but it's still a crime that in other countries we send them to prison, often here in the Netherlands they're not sent to prison. They're given, for example, a band on their, a monitoring band on their on their leg, in order that they, particularly if they have children, families, in order that they don't have to be separated from their families, so their children can still grow up with their dad or their mum in their lives, and that the cycle of crime is less likely to be repeated, so that those children don't grow up as a normal part of their life having to go and visit dad every once a week or once a month or however often it is to go. So prison isn't seen as a normal part of their life. Alternative forms of punishment are looked at before prison. Whereas in a place like in the United States, bang 'em up, 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 kill them, bang 'em up, bang 'em up, bang 'em up, bang 'em up, kill them, bang 'em up, bang 'em up, bang 'em up, throw away the key. Don't give a fuck. You will give a fuck when that banged up person comes at you with a gun, because they haven't received the care, the hope, the rehabilitation, the inclusion that they deserve only as a human being. Not because they're amazing people, not because they've done amazing things with their life. They haven't. But very often they haven't had the tools to do so. Obviously there's disproportionate amounts of black people in prison in the United States. There's disproportionate amounts of mentally retarded people, people with mental problems in the United States. So clearly there are people who come from poorer backgrounds, from disadvantaged backgrounds, backgrounds where crime has been part of the cycle of their life. If we invested more time and money in rehabilitation, in aftercare, in prevention, those are the things that mattered. But as I say, criminal justice system, a country, the measure of a country is how well do they treat the worst people in that country. Would I be proud to be American? Hell no. What do you think a criminal justice system should be for? Your comments, suggestions, ideas, please below at the bottom of the page. There's always things I think of I should have said. I don't like to be scripted. I just say what I feel. I have a topic. I think about it a bit beforehand and then I just say what I feel. So sometimes I leave out things or I make mistakes and words don't always come to my head, but I like to keep it natural. So give me your comments, give me your suggestions, give me your ideas. Let me know what you think below, or send me a message through my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whichever. I'll be back possibly tomorrow. We're going to be discussing drugs and drug legislation. So there we go. Remember, if you've always done what you've always, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So, just think about it. Anyway, ciao for now. This has been PECS and Politics with me, Benedict Garrett, coming to you live from the Netherlands. Doei!